Greed, control, elitism, and privilege. I attribute these traits to corporations and their higher ups, and they want your complacency. Complacency to let their actions slide, to set our limits, to keep us in the dark. Yet, there's an infinitesimally small group who've held the torches, illuminating the truth, and they pass their torches to us, waiting for us to light our fires within the current tension of our society. People are dying from corporations' greed. You saw earlier, insurance won't cover enough or cover at all, with most people unable to pay out of pocket. It's depressing and it's unfair. Just roll the clip.
Erin Weaver was always worried about her 27-year-old son, Josh, a type 1 diabetic.
My son couldn't afford the life-saving medication he needed. He had insurance through his job.
Even so, his prescription cost him $1,200 a month, more than his rent. So last year, he switched to a cheaper, over-the-counter version.
The switch caused a shock to his system.
Within months, he died.
As a mom, I feel like it's my fault.
It's not, though. It's not her fault that her son was born into a world with a certain disease and died because life saving medication was unaffordable. And it's not just him. Cole Schmidtneck just 3 weeks ago, Alex Smitholt, and plenty more. Besides insulin, surgery costs and transplants are a problem too, especially with the case of Natalie Sarkeesian. At age 14, she was diagnosed with leukemia and needed a liver transplant. However, her insurance, Cigna Healthcare, cited that the surgery was too experimental or proven not to be safe, even though it wasn't. Protest and public outcry came out, and when Cigna finally caved in, it was too late, as the hospital passed down two livers, and she died a few hours later due to her deteriorating condition. Following Nataline's death, Cigna issued another statement. Their loss is immeasurable, and our thoughts and prayers are with them. We deeply hope that the outpouring care, concern, and love that are being expressed for Nataline's family help them at this time. Bullshit. Drawn on frowns and fake tears. You say their loss is immeasurable, but your profits were more immeasurable and valuable than her life. Her family wouldn't need all that concern and love to help them if you had just helped first. And guess what? That same quarter, their profits increased by 22%. I wonder how many more fucking people they sacrificed for those numbers. Insurers should not be able to give us the death sentences for our inability to survive off the scraps that they give us. In 2009, Harvard EDU posted a study that finds 45,000 annual deaths due to lack of insurance coverage. That's almost triple the homicides that same year, making healthcare insurers commit more murders than actual killers. So, what if someone was to give them a taste of their own medicine? Corporations want to control what we see and how we think. We can see this with Luigi Mangione, a name I'm sure you're familiar with. But let's rewind a little. It's December 4th, 2024, Midtown Manhattan, New York City. It was early in the morning as Brian Thompson, the United Healthcare CEO, was walking out of a Hilton hotel on his way to attend an annual investors meeting for United Healthcare's parent company, United Health Group. Then suddenly, Luigi came from around the corner and shot him 3 times, each round inscribed with the words delay, deny, and depose. Immediately fleeing the scene, but 5 days later, on December 9th, he was found and arrested for Thompson's death. Upon his arrest, he was found with a manifesto, which can accredit his motive, which criticized the American healthcare system and corporate greed. We can assume from his manifesto that he, or someone he knew was wronged by the system, just like Natalie Sarkeesian. When it came to coverage of his murder, many news outlets and political figures were disgusted and angry with the killing, while people on the streets were celebrating and rejoicing. Ben Shapiro responded to the situation with his video, The Evil Revolutionary Left Cheers Murder, in which he tries to convince his right audience that the left's cheers over Brian Thompson's death were unprecedented, radical, and most importantly, evil. Let's look at his video and see his argument.
Thompson's great sin, according to these people, is that he was the head of a company that exists within a mixed private public healthcare framework and that he did his job. Because that's how health insurance actually works. Some things are covered and some things are not. And you may not like the application of the coverage and it may be bad.
Ironically, Ben Shapiro, you don't have to worry about coverage because you're rich. How's that $50 million net worth going for you? Later on, he says, violence is not justified in a democracy, where your say is part of the process. This is why democracies are generally good. It would be good if it was a democracy, but is it really when healthcare insurers, tax prep companies, and prisons have been shown to lobby the government for stricter laws for profit? By the way, lobbying is attempts to influence the action of any legislative body. Citing Luigi's manifesto, he says even though we have the most expensive healthcare system in the world, we are 42nd in life expectancy. And as United Healthcare's profits go up, our life expectancy doesn't. In Luigi's manifesto, he mentioned that no one, most likely referring to corporations, CEOs, politicians, and lawmakers, that their voices aren't being heard. Looking back at the deaths from healthcare, violence seems like one of the only ways to usher for a change. People have been trying to change policy. People have been suffering and begging those in power for a change, and yet nothing has happened. Until 2 months ago, where Luigi Mangione took action. Ben failed severely to convince his audience this, as seen by the many comments on his video. Most, if not all, the comments on his video were calling him out on his BS. Of course, when Brian died, he left 2 children behind and his wife. A broken family is tragic, but so are the many cases of corruption by United Healthcare. So take what you will. Contrasting the media's and politicians' view, I'll show you what the public thinks. The public's obsession with Luigi Mangione, primarily on the internet, signals a major shift. Being quite literally the title of this Wired article, it seems people love Luigi. A lot of praise dedicated, ballads, Blue Sky users marveling over his escape, look-alike contests, dedicated playlists, and even fan fiction. People are out there on the streets, so protesting and supporting him, going as far as to see even a glimpse of him when he enters the courthouse, and spelling out his name with their hands. He is seen as a folk hero to them. The media tries to portray Luigi differently, with most photos showing him angry and trying to paint him as a villain. Additionally, they use the word alarmingly a lot to describe the situation. However, the juxtaposition between the media and the public is clear, showing the levels of control corporations will try to use to convince you that they are on your side. This is exemplified in Buy More, a shopping conspiracy, as many corporations already try to paint themselves as the good guys and make you feel better about buying their products and using their services. Ironically, they utilize wasteful and unethical practices to improve profit. Privilege and elitism, simply because they are rich, does not justify their actions and the treatment they receive. When it comes to Luigi's treatment in court, he is shackled, tried in 3 separate cases, can't speak with his lawyers as frequently, and is pressured to consent to trying the case at the state level, then at the federal level while he is being held in federal custody, with the death penalty looming over him. They claim he is propagating terrorism, but terrorism is typically to the masses, and the masses aren't being threatened. It's just the CEOs. Most defendants aren't shackled, being tried in multiple cases, aren't restricted with their lawyer, touch federal courts, and aren't ever usually given the death penalty, being less than 2% of murderers who are. Knowing all of this injustice, there surely must be something we can do, right? It seems that we are in a position that we can spark change, and it doesn't have to be violence. At least, I hope so. Corporations are afraid and might be willing to listen a little more after the first act of violence. After Brian's death, United Healthcare started accepting more coverage claims and delayed their plan of no longer covering anesthesia for surgery. Many companies removed their About Me sections to hide their higher ups' identities, mostly in fear of ending up with the same fate. In Martin Luther King's A Letter from Birmingham Jail, he explains that people have a responsibility to follow just laws and break unjust ones, stating that not all laws are just, and that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. This relates to the current situation, for an awakening in our society to push for nonviolent protest. In the letter, he says, if his repressed emotions do not come out in these nonviolent ways, they will come out in ominous expressions of violence. This is not a threat, it is a fact of history. MLK urges to release discontent with creative nonviolent protest. Furthermore, in his letter, he discusses that some are desensitized to the problem, and at certain times they profit or are okay with the problem because it doesn't affect them either from economic security or education. Luigi Mangione directly embodies the line afterwards. The other force is one of bitterness and hatred, and comes perilously close to advocating for violence. And he did perform that act of violence. Whether he is asking for more to follow his path is not known for sure. Earlier in the letter, he calls out the clergy for their hypocritical stance and how the church flickers between the line of being morally responsible for intervening with social issues, and that they cannot call themselves righteous behind those apathetic stained glass windows. The people he calls out in his letter directly parallel the role of the current dilemma. Before we discuss the roles, he says that the white moderate are more of a problem than the Ku Klux Klan when it comes to the social issues with black people in the South at that time. The white moderate in this situation being politicians and the ignorant, allowing this control either from being paid off to do so and staying desensitized due to their economic security. The Ku Klux Klan being corporations who are the source of the problem. Today's society can also directly parallel the role of the oppressed that black people faced back then. You can do more than just protest. Not all hope is lost. Connecting with local government and legislation is where you can do the most. After one of the insulin death cases, Colorado capped the price of insulin out of pocket at $100. And insulin prices on average have gone down from $274 in 2023 to $66.40 last year. My conclusion from reading this letter is that peace, or more of a deadlock, is a time where tension is built, until there's enough tension to pressure humanity to change. There is a way out of this, following MLK's words, to use our creative, nonviolent protest as the solution instead of a blood fueled rampage.